The Buster Sword, Cloud's most iconic weapon and arguably his least used. So how does a weapon that only lasts a few hours into the game strike such a chord in our hearts that it becomes one of the most iconic weapons in video game history? Released in 1997, Final Fantasy VII's American box art is a legendary pop culture icon in gaming. A spiky-haired protagonist with a large blade on his back staring down an ominous building looming in the distance. As you look at the cover, you notice the blade, larger than the average sword. Thin handle, long flat top, straight blade with a curve at the end. Two holes are lined up together right at the hilt of the weapon. The wielder must truly be a strong warrior to lift and use such a weapon. After beginning the game and being wowed by graphics that you never thought were possible, you meet our game's hero. After jumping from the train he rode in on, you get into your first battle and finally get to use this amazing weapon. This ex-soldier, as he's called, slashes away and defeats the armed guards with ease. A few minutes later, you discover that he has a name. His name is Cloud Strife, a former member of Soldier, an elite military unit. This mysterious mercenary was hired for one thing: destroy the reactor that's stealing the life force of the planet. This is where our adventure begins. But it's after a few hours, and with the help of a special item known as Steel Materia, that you can find Cloud's new weapon, the Hardedge. Much better statistically, the Hardedge renders the Buster Sword useless. The weapon you envision in your character's hands as you hurried home from the store, now relegated to storage space. You can't sell it, but you don't have any use for it either. It stays in your inventory for the next 40 hours as Cloud continues to find better weapons. You'll see it again in cutscenes and minigames, but it's clear that the weapon wasn't what it used to be. It's not until much later in the game that we really see its significance to the character we've grown to love. What seemed like useless metal is now part of the very identity of our character, a passing of the torch if you will. After suffering some of the most traumatic losses that a human being should ever have to endure, our hero begins to crack, his once powerful facade now torn away as he descends into madness. Cloud finally realizes that he's not the person he thought he was, as does the player. He learns the truth of his past and what the sword means to him and his identity. When you go into the lifestream in Mideel and discover what really happened, you learn a lot about how this weapon is so important. Especially after you go into the Shinra Mansion in Nibelheim later in the game and you see the secret scene, it changes your whole perspective on the weapon itself. Then it hits you. This weapon isn't supposed to represent brute strength or even be the best weapon in the game. It's actually a character itself. It's the symbol of sacrifice and it's the symbol of hope. This is the impact of the Buster Sword, not the power that wielding it gives the player, but what it represents for the characters, what it means to the players themselves as they learn the truth about their hero. The Buster Sword is as much of Cloud's identity as it is the player. As a 6-year-old kid in 1997, I didn't know much of what I was doing. I never stole the Hardedge and I never replaced the Buster Sword. I somehow made it through Midgar only to get stuck on the Midgar Zalem. At the time, I thought I had to defeat the creature to move on with the story. It wasn't until I had given up and gone back to when I was in middle school that I learned how to actually play the game. And when the time came, I placed the Buster Sword in my inventory, but it was still in my memory. It wasn't the Ultima weapon or the Hardedge on the cover of our favorite game, it was the Buster Sword. Little did we know that the weapon would play a minor but also pivotal role in this game being so memorable. When I see the Buster Sword, I get those feelings of being a kid again and remembering how amazing it was that I got to wield it. For the player, it's a symbol of our beginnings. Final Fantasy VII is a lot of people's first JRPGs and some people's first video game ever. When they looked at the package for the first time, the image of the hero with his massive sword was immediately burned into their memories, and 23 years later, it's still there. Still a symbol of days gone by, a symbol of fond memories, a symbol of a simpler time. For my international friends and members of the ranks of soldiers who had the Meteor box art, the first moment you saw the weapon is still in your memories. Many of us running home from school or going back to our dorm rooms trying to play more of this grand adventure. Or maybe you were an adult with a full-time job and kids, and when you had a spare moment, you played as much as you could. Whatever walk of life you came from, one image, one weapon is burned into our memories forever, the Buster Sword. It has brought millions of fans all across the world together under one fandom. It's a simple weapon, but with anything but a simple history. For me, it means more than you might think. Cloud Strife struggled with acceptance as a child, a trait I carried in my own childhood. Cloud Strife struggled with his identity, much like I used to. I've never known exactly what I wanted to do in life, but I knew I wanted it to be with video games. I had a failed YouTube channel a few years ago, and after I officially deemed it a failure, I gave up and took almost a year off. I had lost my identity and tossed aside my dreams. During that year off, I played Final Fantasy VII again, and my passion for video games and YouTube was reignited. The sight of that sword made the memories and the feelings I had inside all come back with a passion. It was then that I had found my identity, much like Cloud in the livestream at Mideel. It wasn't my failures that defined me, it was how I rose up from those failures. That sword became my symbol of hope, and the reason I'm Soldier First Class, the reason we've built the ranks of Soldier. That's what Final Fantasy VII means to me. It's not only one of my favorite games of all time, but the reason I figured out who I was in life and on YouTube. It's the symbol for my journey on this platform, and the symbol for why I fought to get where I am on it. That sword held not only the memories of Zack Fair and Cloud Strife, but also my own, and I think for the millions of people that played this masterpiece of video game history, it holds their memories too. And that's what makes this community truly so special, as without this game and without all of you, I wouldn't be Soldier First Class. The next part will contain some minor story related spoilers for the original game, so please be warned. It was after Sephiroth's betrayal that Cloud would wield the Buster Sword for the first time, striking down his hero and future nemesis. It's as much a part of Cloud's history as Sephiroth is. It was this event that caused Cloud's severe hatred towards someone he once called a hero. For a simple sword, it holds inside of it its fair share of memories, inside the game and outside of it. For our next part, I want to go back to E3 2015. The trailer began and we quickly realized that Final Fantasy VII Remake was real, but for me, the realization didn't hit until the moment where we see the handle of the Buster Sword come into view. As Cloud slowly walks away from the camera and Barret also comes into view, my heart almost burst with excitement. The weapon that began my adventure was back, as was the game. My entire life, I had one wish if they were ever to remake this game. It wasn't updated graphics, and it wasn't a slick new battle system. It was that the Buster Sword play more prominently in the game, that it would be more useful than only for a few hours. That's a wish that the Final Fantasy VII Remake team have granted me. They've not only granted my wish for a remake, they've made my favorite weapon in video games relevant again. With the remake's new upgrade and ability system, I can upgrade the weapon, increase its power, and I can viably wield the blade as long as I want. However, I will say that I did want the new battle system and graphics upgrades, but the Buster Sword was on top of my wish list. But that's not all when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. When I get the physical case, the cover will remind me of the time I went to the store as a 6-year-old boy, looked at the case for the first time, and the image of that sword was burned into my memory. It's a memory I will cherish forever, and one that I get to relive 23 years later. In some way, this is also the passing of the torch. We're in the next generation now, and our kids will be playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake. They'll see the Buster Sword through their own eyes in the way that we did 23 years ago. The cycle will continue in the hearts and minds of our living legacies. Our children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and friends' children will all be looking at that sword, maybe for the first time, and beginning an adventure all their own. It's my hope that the Buster Sword will become the symbol of their generation too. It may not be the best weapon in the game or the most useful, but it's the symbol of an entire generation of gamers across the world. The weapon that started it all and the most important weapon in our hearts. So when you go to the store and you pick up Final Fantasy VII Remake, I want you to remember the first time you saw that sword. I want you to feel the way that you felt when you first opened up the package and popped the first disc into your PlayStation. Or maybe you have never played the original and the remake will be your first time. I want you to remember how that moment feels as you look upon the hopes and dreams that began 23 years ago. Before I finish this video, I want to give a special shout out to my new patrons, Lamont Reed, Lee Trott, Jason Lengan, and Drew Kreisman. Thank you for becoming Patreon supporters and making my dreams of becoming a full-time content creator that much closer to reality. Congratulations on being promoted to the rank of Soldier First Class. Shout out to you and the rest of the ranks of Soldier. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to Omni-slash that like button. Let me know in the comments section below what the Buster Sword and Final Fantasy VII means to you. Subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell to join the ranks of Soldier today. And for all the latest Final Fantasy VII content, I'm Soldier First Class, and I'm on to the next mission. Later, guys.